What do you get if you take a popular hatchback from a Korean brand and add about 20mm to its ride height? Well, this. My name's Jasper, you're watching Buckle Up, and this is the Kia XCeed. This model aims to fill a niche in the Korean car maker's lineup, slotting just in between the Stonic and the Niro. Now, it's a very similar size to the Niro, but offers potentially a little bit more style. You'll initially spot this styling at the front with the very prominent Kia tiger-nosed grille. You've also got Kia's new logo up at the top and some quite stylish headlamps, nice bits of gloss plastic and some lovely brushed silvery plastic around some actually genuinely real vents on the front of the car. You've got an all LED headlamp cluster with 3 daytime running light strikes through it. And yes, the front end has got some interesting styling creases and curves. All in all, a very stylish design. Now, those headlamp clusters curve around the side of the car, and it's here where you start to notice the proper differences between the Ceed and the XCeed, because as well as the additional 20mm of ride height, you also get some chunky off-road style plastic cladding round your wheel arches. These aim to kind of embolden the styling of the car and give you more of a jacked up, roughy-tufty appearance. This is inherently a crossover because it's a hatchback that has just been lifted a little bit, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad car. The front end is certainly nowhere near as low as the Ceed's, and that slightly raised appearance does continue throughout the entire side of the car, aided by these additional bits of black plastic cladding along the bottom of the door line. You've got some lovely 18-inch alloy wheels, but they don't look too big for the car, and you've actually still got a relatively good amount of sidewall on those tyres. Gloss black diamond cut finish on the alloy wheels, which matches handily with the black plastic mirror caps, and also you'll notice that this has a panoramic roof. Moving further backwards, you'll see privacy glass in the rear windows and quite a fetching drop off into the rear of the car, which is actually quite sleek and sporty looking. The design of the rear light clusters kind of mimics those of the front, with the actual unit curving around from the side of the car to the back. And I absolutely love the design of these. All of the individual elements within this that are all LED lit as well just makes this a really kind of statement piece on the lighting aspect of this car. Moving further around the back, you see the continuation of the roughy-tufty elements that the XCeed has over the Ceed, with large bits of cladding and a kind of diffuser splitter type thing. And the car is also noticeably slabbish at the back. Now, this does actually look quite good, I think. Prominent Kia logo on your boot lid, and the overall styling on this car, I think, is very well tied together. You've got the gloss black roof rails as well, so you've got a few little elements on this that make it seem a little bit more lifestyle-y as opposed to just plain old hatchback. Now, as a crossover, you'd be expecting some practical touches, and the XCeed doesn't disappoint, with the boot capacity on this model going all the way up to 426 litres, depending on the powertrain you have fitted. This model is the 1.5 litre petrol turbo, so this will have one of the larger capacity boots, although this does have a more premium sound system, so you've actually got a couple of subwoofers here which will eat into that volume a little bit. Now, the boot is actually a wonderfully flat space with a really good opening that is almost as wide as the car, and underneath the floor you've got space for your tyre inflation kit and a few other gubbins. There is actually some space down here that you could probably shove some things in. Now, this floor does also drop down, and what that means is you increase your boot capacity at the expense of having a bit more of a lip to lift things over. The boot has your standard practical elements in it, such as tie downs and curry hooks, and if you fold the rear seats down, this volume increases to up to 1,328 litres, which is pretty good for the class. Another model in Kia's range, the Niro, which is very similarly sized to this, does ever so slightly beat it on boot capacity, but this is probably a bit more stylish. The theme of stylish practicality continues on the interior of the XCeed, with this car in particular being the GT line trim, which has some absolutely gorgeous materials on the interior. You've got a lovely mix of kind of Alcantara and leather, although I believe both of these will actually be synthetic alternatives, and you've got some really good practical elements in here. I've got nets on both of the backs of the front seats. I've got a USB-C charging port down here, rear air vents, and with this being one of the higher trims, both of the rear seats have two-stage heated seating, which is a really nice touch. Now, the space back here is pretty good, although with this model having the panoramic sunroof, that does eat into your headroom a little bit. So even I, at a measly 5'7.5", am kind of verging on the edge of my hair is brushing the ceiling, although that does add a couple of inches to my height. Generally, the materials, even on places where some rivals might fall down, such as door cards, are pretty good. Now, this is plastic up here, it's not soft touch, but it's not a cheap feeling plastic, and that is really nice to see because it does help just lift the quality of the interior, or certainly the perceived quality of the interior. Now, all windows on this car are electric, and the tinted glass on the rear does add a nice element of privacy while also helping the exterior look quite good. I've got twin cup holders in the centre armrest and a cup holder in each door card that will hold a reasonably sized bottle of water. These seats are incredibly comfortable and there is a reasonable amount of leg room, so on a longer journey you could stretch out a little bit and be quite comfortable. This car also feels quite sporty due to it having a black headliner and entirely black interior actually, which does really cocoon you inside. Up front, it's a similar story, with pretty premium materials surrounding you in a perfectly practical cabin. It is a bit of a sea of black up here with some highlighted accents on the door cards and below the infotainment screen in a brushed silver. Pretty classy design of interior, certainly very well integrated, and actually you've got a nice squidgy soft touch dashboard. The material on the seats matches that in the back with some perforated pleather and Alcantara, and you've got the GT line emblem stitched into the backrest of both of the front seats. Now, the kit list is quite comprehensive, with this being the GT line model, so I've got dual zone climate control up front, both seats are 3-stage heated, and I have a heated steering wheel to boot. One place where Kia have saved some money is by only making the driver's seat electrically adjustable. The passenger has to make do with the old levers and shuffling forwards and backwards. Now, the seating position is really comfortable, and despite this being a lifted up car, I still feel pretty well planted while I'm in it. Everything inside the cabin is incredibly easy to reach. You've got a really good range of controls and buttons on the steering wheel. Your driver's stalks are very good, nice feeling to them, and most of the features you would need are integrated into them. All of your light settings on the left-hand stalk and your wipers on the right. This car has got auto LED headlamps with high beam assist and auto wipers up front. And I really like actually the way that the washer jets for the front windscreen are hidden completely underneath the back edge of the bonnet. Really nice, clean bit of design work there. Very well integrated. The practicality continues too, with a cubby down here which has a nice soft close cover over it, a Qi wireless charging pad just above it, and twin cup holders in the centre, as well as an armrest which has a position adjustable lid on it and a very good sized cubby underneath. Door cards have large pockets in them where you've got space for a 750ml bottle of water, as well as a few other bits and pieces, and you've got a very good sized glove box. No extra little fuse box tucked in here because it's designed well. There's a lot of safety tech integrated into this car as well, with a blind spot warning system, lane keep assist with active steering, and unfortunately the only thing it's really missing is radar guided cruise control. There's a large infotainment screen front and centre which is relatively well integrated into the dashboard. However, the absolute best bit of this interior is the driver's digital cluster. Really good system, incredibly crisp and sharp graphics, and you can display a hell of a lot of information in there. Now, it's not just style and practicality where the XCeed does a pretty good job. It actually drives very well as well. Now, this model is the 1.5 litre turbocharged petrol 4-cylinder, and that unit produces 158 brake horsepower and 253 newton meters of torque. And that means that it's actually a pretty pokey unit. Certainly a very healthy power output for the engine capacity, and it feels very responsive too. In a world where we're chasing fewer emissions while still retaining the same levels of performance, this engine does a pretty good job. Now, this is not the only drivetrain available in this model. You can also get a 1.6 litre petrol plug-in hybrid and I believe also a 1 litre 3-cylinder. Now, personally, I would say this engine is probably the pick of the bunch from an outright driver's engagement perspective, because the 158 brake horsepower certainly does a very good job of pulling you along, and the 0 to 62 sprint is dispatched in about 8.7 seconds. So yeah, it's not fast, it's not going to blow your socks off, but it's still a pretty good car in terms of power. Now, does it hold its own on the twisties? Yeah, it does actually, surprisingly so for what is a jacked up hatchback. Now, often what happens when a hatchback is jacked up is the suspension has to be made really stiff to prevent it rolling and try and control the body roll in the corners, and that can lead to it having a ridiculously harsh ride. But thankfully, that's not actually happened here. Now, the XCeed is only 20mm taller than the Ceed, so that obviously helps in terms of dynamics because you've not been lifted up too much, but also the suspension hasn't been stiffened. In actual fact, it's ever so slightly softer than that of the Ceed, and this means that yes, it will roll a little bit more in the corners, but in a way it's less skittish and more predictable for that. It's certainly a car that you can actually have a reasonable amount of fun driving on twisty roads in. Now, something else that is brilliant is the gearbox. Hyundai and Kia routinely have far better manual gearboxes than they should in a way. They don't generally make performance cars, Hyundai's N division aside, and the gearboxes that they put in their regular cars are really quite good. This one is a 6-speed manual. It's beautifully notchy and pretty well ratioed. Third gear, yeah, is quite tall, but in a car where you're trying to get good fuel economy, taller gears certainly do make that a little bit easier to obtain. The action on the shift lever is brilliant and it just notches into gear beautifully. The steering wheel is a mixture of flat and perforated leather, and it's really quite nice to hold. Good shape with a flat bottom and the GT line badge down here, which means it feels quite sporty. And one interesting thing is at the bits where you should hold it in the 10 to 2 to quarter to 3 region, there's actually a little kind of recessed dip where you can latch your thumbs round, and that makes it feel quite engaging. It forces you to hold it in the correct location for driving where you're kind of pressing on a little bit. The clutch feels good, it's quite light, but it's very easy to use and it's quite easy to get a smooth pull away with it. The brakes as well, they have a good bite on them, very progressive. Quite standard new car things really. The driving experience on the whole is actually very good. I can't really find anything to fault it on. You've got a fantastic array of driver assists, which means you're well cared for when you are driving. The lane keep assist in urban settings where you might have to nip over the line to go past a parked car can get a little bit annoying. If you're purposeful about the movement though, it doesn't intrude. It's more if you kind of drift slowly that it starts to beep at you and interfere. But then again, the car's just doing its job at that point, isn't it? It's not exactly, it doesn't know why you're straying over the line, it just knows you are. Whereas if it's a more deliberate action, it's more inclined to go, oh, we're going here, yeah? Now, visibility is potentially one of the weaker points on this car. The front windscreen is quite a shallow rake, so the result of that is you've got quite a compressed view forwards, and that means that, yeah, your forwards visibility isn't as good as it potentially could be on something with a sharper or with a more vertical screen, but it's by no means bad. Sideways visibility is also very good. Rear is, yeah, not great. The stylish rear end of this with the slightly sloped roofline does mean that you do have quite a thin letterbox at the back end. So visibility is probably the weaker point, but the rest of the driving experience is actually really good. It's certainly a car that you can have a good amount of fun in. Even though it is, yes, a jacked up hatchback, it's probably one of the best handling jacked up hatchbacks I've driven, because it's not actually that jacked up. Styling wise, yes, but styling wise it's jacked up, but actual dynamic wise, not really. Kia have done a fantastic job of making a hatchback crossover. The engine's pretty punchy. Under harsh acceleration you do get a little bit more noise coming through to the cabin, but some of that might be piped in. It's certainly quite gruff when you stab your foot down. The driver's instrument cluster is fantastic, really crisp, clear graphics. You can cycle through a few different screens and display lots of information there, or if you're using the inbuilt sat-nav system, you can display the map there too. Now, are you going to be using that built-in sat-nav system? Probably not, because obviously this has got Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and the result of that is a really good built native system to what you're used to, using all of the apps on your phone that you would usually use anyway. So most people, I imagine, will be plugging straight in rather than using the built-in system. The rest of the infotainment system is very good. The speaker system in here I don't think is quite as good as the Bose setup that a lot of Hyundais seem to have at the moment, but it is one from JBL and it does have a bit of power behind it anyway. This is a good suspension test. You know what? For this class of car, it's actually handling it pretty well. No car is comfortable down here. It's like the Belgian Pavé at Millbrook Proving Ground, I think. Ooh. I can see why your sat-nav doesn't usually send you this way. Urban driving is a breeze in this car. It's certainly pretty easy to place in traffic because it's not too big, standard family hatchback size, and it holds its own very well on the motorway as well. The 158 brake horsepower and 253 newton meters of torque are more than enough to get you up to speed and then comfortably keep you at motorway speeds. The suspension on the car is very good and it settles down nicely when you are driving at motorway speeds, so it's pretty compliant and quite comfortable. It's pretty quiet at high speeds as well. You are quite well insulated from external noise, and it's a very comfortable driving experience. Certainly with the really good with the really good adjustability in the driver's seat, which is electric, coupled with the good movement in the steering column, reach and rake, heated seat and heated steering wheel, it really is a very comfortable driving experience. And the fact that the car isn't too jiggly and handles itself quite well as that, does make the overall experience very good. So, does the XCeed exceed expectations? Yeah, it does, to be honest. For mid to high £20,000 range, this is a pretty good all-round package. It's certainly got an engaging driving experience, practical interior and some pretty premium materials. All in all, a very good buy. I would recommend one of these if you're looking for a practical hatchback-sized crossover. Thank you so much for watching today's video. If you have enjoyed it, please do let me know by liking, commenting and subscribing to the Buckle Up YouTube channel if you have not done any of them already. There are 3 ways you can support the channel: Patreon, Spreadshop for some lovely merch, or here on YouTube, where you can either give us some thanks or become a channel member if you'd like to support us on a monthly basis. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.